That last sentence in the gospel, to me, seemed to be a little bit out of place. He's talking about perseverance and prayer. And then all of a sudden he says, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? And I was thinking about that and thinking about the first reading and the battle scenes that we had in that, with the battle of Amalek and the Israelites. And then, like I've spoken before, the diocese is embarking on a new way to see our mission as disciples. And went through a conference last week and heard about missionary discipleship and all that stuff, and how the language needs to change. And it kind of all came together. Because I think what Jesus was talking about, when you think about, well, why wouldn't the Son of Man find faith when he came to earth? What is it that could drive faith away from people? And it kind of boils down to the realization that we are in a spiritual battle. There is a battle waging. And for a long time, I used to think, well, the battle was between Satan and God, right? That's the spiritual battle. He's out there fighting God, and we're just kind of getting caught up in the battles here and there. We're, kind of collateral damage. We're like refugees. But the reality is Satan isn't fighting God. He already lost that battle. He can't beat God. Satan is fighting us. See, we are the target of the spiritual battle. See, when God revealed the plan to all the angels, and Satan realized that he had a special place for humanity, that we'd actually become divinized. We would be baptized. We would be seated at a higher level than them. He didn't like that. And he rebelled against that. So instead of attacking God, what his whole aim is to drive as many people away from God as he possibly could. So that's why he's waging the spiritual battle against us. And I was thinking about in the first reading with Amalek, this king comes and wages war against Israel, and Israel could not defeat this king. Amalek was going to wipe them out. The only reason they prevailed is because God was fighting for them. And that was symbolized by Moses holding the staff of God. And as long as the staff of God was being held up, the Israelites were prevailing in battle. But when he got weak and weary and the staff would fall, then Amalek would have the better of the battle. So how did they do that? So Moses stands up, and all of a sudden, his arms get tired. It wasn't that all of a sudden they lost the war and then God said, well, I'll just take it from here. They relied on a community. Aaron and Hur came and sat Moses down and then lifted up his arms to make sure that the staff was up. And then they mowed down the Amalek army. So it was God fighting for them, but also the community. It was the community of Moses, Aaron, Hur, and all the people in the battle. So God wants this community. It's not just him. He wants a community to form to be as part of this battle. Now, in modern times, what is our community? What is the community that Jesus established for us to be in this battle? It's our church, right? Our church is a community. See, it's not just about a single relationship with me and Jesus. It's about a relationship with me and Jesus and my whole community. And we're all in this battle together. We're all here to support each other. We're all here to help each other. We're all here to pick each other up when we fall or when we get bruised or when we get damaged. We're all here to pray for each other like we hear in the gospel. We have to pray, 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 pray. We have to persevere in prayer, and we have to help each other, and we have to be part of this battle. It's a serious battle that's been waging since Adam and Eve. And throughout history, it's kind of changed in the characteristics of the battle and the part that the church had in it. For many years, you could think of, like Europe and even our country was pretty open to Christianity. Most people were Christian. They lived the faith, to one degree or the other. There wasn't this outright hostility toward them. But Christianity was pretty widespread and pretty popular. We had kind of an image of the church at that point in time, I think, that related to it was like a lifeboat. So if you think about the stormy seas of the world, and the church is this lifeboat that's going around, and then as it encounters somebody that's lost, they get pulled into the lifeboat. As long as you're in the lifeboat, you're saved, right? As long as you come upon the church, as long as you walk into the doors, As long as the church is there for you, you're saved. And that's a decent image. That's what the church is. It is here. It's in the world to save souls. But to me, it's a little bit too passive, right? If you think about a lifeboat, you're just kind of out there at the mercy of the wind and of the waves and the currents. And if you just happen upon somebody and you bring them into the boat, that's great. And the focus of that boat is then, the parish would be like the boat itself, and then the greater universal church is this bigger boat that has to come and save you out of your lifeboat. Because if you're in a lifeboat, you're not, you're not all the way home yet. You're still at the mercy of the winds and waves. So it's more of a passive model. As long as you're a member, as long as you're in the lifeboat, everything's okay. It's like an institutional church. I have my membership in the church, I'm saved, and that's good. And that, I think, was good for, maybe the last couple hundred years. But we're at a different time in history. If you look around at all the despair that we have, we talk about the sins of despair, the addictions, the opioid crisis, suicide rates. This was, in the conference I heard, this is the first time since the Middle Ages that the average mortality age has decreased. They're comparing it to when you had the plagues and all this stuff where people were dying in droves. Why is it decreasing? Because the number one cause of death is suicide. You have younger people, they're being addicted, they're dying of drug overdoses and suicides. There's so much despair out there because people don't know Christ. So the battle is a little bit different. You look in our culture, it is not open to Christianity. That's just the reality we live in. And throughout the history, there's been periods like this as well. You think of the early church after the first Pentecost, when the disciples went out and they started preaching the gospel, they weren't greeted with open arms. They met with hostility and persecution instantly. In the Acts of the Apostles, we hear about the first martyrdom, St. Stephen. He was stoned to death because he was preaching the gospel. And then the Roman emperors and, feeding the Christians to the lions and all this stuff. It was just, the world wasn't open to Christ. But people didn't stop. Those were great saints and martyrs that kept the witness. And they knew that the battle was worth it. They had to go out and they had to try to find these souls. I think we're in more of a time now. We're transitioning to that where we get, not fed to the lions, obviously, but we get mocked. You live a Christian life and you try to do the best you can, and people laugh at you. They say you're dumb, all that kind of stuff, put all kinds of labels on you. I don't want to dwell on that, but that's just the reality that we live in. It's more of an apostolic time now. So we have to think of our church as a little bit different. So what image do we have? Instead of a lifeboat floating along, I was thinking of what does the church really like now? And it kind of came to me, it's more like a search and rescue. You look at if there's a natural disaster, we have hurricanes or earthquakes, or even in war zones, there are people that are injured, that are lost, that we have to go out and find. So when you have a search and rescue mission, you set up like a command center, and then people go out and they actively look for those that are injured, those that are lost. I think the church is like the command center. So we all come here and we all gather and we're all fed through the Word of God. We have our community together that we're all praying, but then we have to go out and we have to look for these people. We have to look for the injured. We have to look for those that are in despair, and we have to rescue them. So it's a search and rescue mission. Now when you find somebody, it's not about, it's the way you live your life and how you stand out from society. When you reject the culture and you say, I'm not going to buy into that. I believe in God, and you show that, and you live it, you pray, and people see that, they'll stand out and they'll come to you, and they'll say, well, what do you have that's different? All it really takes is to say, what I have is I was lost too. I was captured. I was in despair, but I found Jesus. And Jesus healed me. And then they'll be like, well, tell me more. How does that happen? What does that work? And then you just start these conversations, and you bring a friendship, and you bring that person to Christ. In reality, that's kind of all it is sometimes. Sometimes there's a lot more heavy evangelization going on, but usually it's just our life and being open to God. And like I've said before, being open to the circumstances where God's going to say, I'm going to use you to reach that person over there. And just saying, okay, let it happen. Let it be. So our church is a command center in a search and rescue mission. We have plenty of things here that help us with that. We have, even when you meet somebody and they are more interested, bring them to Alpha. That's a great start to the faith, even for us. How can we deepen our faith? We go to Alpha. We go to Bible studies. We have those all the time. There's things like curseos and retreats and adult faith formation. The church is trying to give us as many tools as we can to go out and rescue these people. And then when we go out, we get wounded, we get hurt as well. We come back, and we have the sacraments to give us more strength. Sacrament of reconciliation when we fall again. Healing through the Eucharist and strength. So we rely on the sacraments. And again, relying on the community. It's not just me, it's not just you, it's all of us together. The community praying, the community helping, the community being behind us, knowing that we are working for God, and everybody's in our community is helping us and behind us and doing their part as well. So today when you receive the Eucharist, I know there's people here that are out there and they're doing all the great work, but there's people here too that I think are still captured, right? There's people that are, something still hanging on to them. When you receive the Eucharist, let the Lord set you free. That's what he wants. He wants to rescue you. Let it happen. And then when that happens, what is your response? What do you do from that point on? The Lord is here to help us. The Lord is here, but we have to go out. We have to rescue the people. So when the Lord comes, and the Son of Man comes, and he asks you, well, will I find faith on earth? You can say, yeah, I did my part with your help. And I'm confident that we will save as many people as we can through your power. And I know that, yes, you will find faith on earth.